We're here at the River Valley Mall on the green carpet to celebrate the Food Shed Connection of RC&D, Heart of Ohio.
Good afternoon, I'm Dave Libben. I'm the District Conservationist with the Natural Resources Conservation Service, and we are a branch of the U.S. Department of Agriculture. We are one of the many agencies in USDA, but we're rather unique in the fact that we work with private landowners, local farmers and ranchers on their private lands and to solve conservation problems. We are celebrating our 75th year as an agency. We got our start back in the Dust Bowl days of the 1930s. So we've been around for quite a long time, and it's kind of unique that we partner with local folks here in Fairfield County and beyond, and also with state agencies that deal with conservation here in Ohio. So I got a few slides here this afternoon that we're going to talk about some of the conservation practices that are used, that we've used for upwards of some of these for 75 years. But no matter what size the farm is, how you're producing food, if you're producing food for folks to eat, you're producing grain that's going to be run through animals and other sources, all these conservation practices and ideas can be used on any size farm. So we'll get started here and talk about some of the basics. Okay, our basic concept is here: if you keep the land healthy, you're going to have healthy food. Good conservation practices, as I said, can be used on any size farm. And ultimately, we should have sustainable food systems if we're managing the soil, treating Mother Nature right. As a soil conservationist and an agronomist by training, it all starts with the soil. That's the building blocks of everything we do. It doesn't matter if we're trying to raise corn, potatoes, you're trying to build that house. It doesn't matter. We're all standing on soil somewhere during the day. So obviously different soils have different potentials. Some are better than others for raising food. Here in Fairfield County, we're blessed with a lot of good productive land and have had a good rich history here. I believe Fairfield County, probably the name itself says a lot about our soil resources here. And we have a lot of good stewards here in the area that are taking care of the land. But some of the basic tools that we use and we like to share with producers is get to know your soils. And one of the many things we can do, as we've been doing for over 50 years, is doing soils inventories. And every county in the state of Ohio now has a soil survey. And it's a list of characteristics, limit potentials, site-specific information about the soils on your farm. And we have all these lovely maps. Back in the old days, we used to print nice big books full of maps, and we could pull them out. Now we have them on CDs, or even better, you can just go to our USDA website with NRCS, and you can look up almost any county or region in the United States online. So it's very accessible now, and it's actually a very popular site for both agriculture uses, forestry, and various forms of development. So you get some general information here about the soils in your area, and then when you get down to more specifics, I always say test your soil and find out what you got to work with, what kind of nutrients you have there, and these are practices we've been using, like I said, for 75 plus years. And what I have here is an example of a little soil bag that you can take samples in your garden, in your crop fields, doesn't matter, but you'd go around an area and grab core samples anywhere from 4 to maybe 6 inches deep, blend them all together, send them off to a lab, and they're going to give you analysis of your macronutrients and your micronutrients: phosphorus, potassium, calcium, magnesium, all those good things that are needed to raise good and healthy crops. So this is kind of a baseline that we encourage all producers, whether you're a backyard producer or you got 1,000 acres of crops, or you have a small market garden that you're selling to folks to, know where you're at with your nutrients so you can grow those healthy foods. Then we're also concerned about our water resources here. Ohio generally has ample rainfall. We have close to 40 inches of rain on a typical year. So excess water can be a problem, and right now maybe a little lack of water. We haven't had those rains. So we also talk about using different conservation practices that are going to reduce runoff and pollution in the state waters, but yet also do water conserving practices that'll hold the soil or hold the moisture in the soil for your crop. Where we want to get started with folks is put together a conservation plan for their land. And that starts with an inventory of what kind of resource issues you have out there, looking at, again, soil erosion, the types of cover that are out there, what do you want to do with the land, what do you want to grow, what's your short term, what's your long term. So get an idea, just much like you'd have a business plan to put together, what's your soil resources conservation plan that we want to put together. So we have a lot of technical resources in our office. We can help you with that. We're full of good maps that we could go back to. But part of it's an interview process and seeing where you want to go and then giving you some ideas about some ways that you can get there. Again, we have a whole slew of different conservation practices that are tried and true. I listed some typical ones here that are used in this area, but they're used all across the country as well, and they can be used on an acre or two type of farm market stuff all the way up to the large crop production. But some of these age-old practices we use, crop rotations, alternating crops, different types of crops after each other, not having the same crop every year to deplete the soil. Thomas Jefferson wrote about that extensively way back when. Nutrient management, I just talked about getting your soil tests. You can also get plant tissue analysis as well to find out if you have adequate nutrient needs. And where are you getting your recycled nutrients from? Are you getting it from compost or manures or commercial fertilizers? There's different ways to feed the soil as well. Pest management, how are you going to manage things for weeds infestations as well as insects and what they might impact on the crop. Conservation tillage is a general term that I use that we've really been promoting since the early 80s, but keeping the soil protected when a crop is not being grown and keeping lots of mulches and previous crop residues on the surface to protect it from erosion. Mulch residues go with conservation tillage. Vegetative buffers, these are the green zones that we try to have on the edges of fields, next to waterways, and that sort of thing, to kind of buffer the water that comes off the fields and before it enters the water source. Very popular practice, and we can do a lot of other things with those areas, from recreational and wildlife and different things too, that producers really find quite helpful. Windbreaks with trees or shrubs can be very important in some windy areas, more as you get to western and northwestern Ohio, but we have our areas here in Fairfield County that we need them as well too. And I haven't talked anything about livestock yet, but one very popular practice we've used over the last 10 years is rotational grazing, and that's where we take large pastures, chop them up into smaller areas, and we rotate the animals through, so that instead of getting the whole big thing in one shot, we give them smaller sections, gives the grass time to regrow, keeps more good cover out there, and very beneficial for wildlife. And I just thought I'd show a few practices of some of the things in motion here, but I have some vegetable crops being grown here. The picture on the left shows alternating rows of leafy crops, and then we have some green mulches or green crops grown in between grasses and oats and different things like that to help keep the soil in place, adds organic matter, very healthy. You can see the straw mulches up to the right side. And then actually inside here we actually have drip irrigation going on here to keep those crops growing. So we're using water management as well as a way of producing healthy food for us.